Welcome to Fight Back Radio, a production of fightbacknews.org, taking you to the heart of the people's struggles. I'm your host, Richard Berg, and we got a great show for you today. Those of you that are watching on video are wondering, why the heck is Richard wearing a Christmas hat and a red shirt and all this other stuff? Did he lose some kind of bet or something like that? And it's actually not true, but the production team thought it would be fun. I think they thought funny is probably the word they were really thinking of if I did this. So I thought, what the heck, I'm going to give them a treat. They work hard. And so here I am with a crazy looking Santa hat on, trying to talk serious to you about politics and taking you to the heart of the people's struggles. Our show today is a little bit different than our typical show. I don't have a guest. We're going to review some of the things that we really haven't talked about very much this year during the podcast, maybe a year in review kind of thing. And then 2 weeks from now, we have a very special guest, one of the major candidates for mayor of the city of Chicago, Brandon Johnson, is going to be on our show. So I'll encourage you to tune back then 2 weeks from now. But I want to wish everybody a happy holiday season. I know many of you work very hard in your job and your livelihood, and then you do other things for our struggle and our movement, and it's taxing. So I'm encouraging people to get some rest over the holidays, to just chill out, enjoy family and friends, and do whatever it takes to get yourself recharged, because 2023 promises to be another year of serious struggle for working class and oppressed peoples. And we need you in it. Quite frankly, we really need you in it. Also, I just want to acknowledge the holidays are often a very difficult time for some of our friends and comrades. And so, if you lean on your other, the people you're political with, your friends, family, whoever, and if it's hard for you, our thoughts are with you. I know some people have lost loved ones. It's, the solstice is the shortest day of the year, so it seems like it's dark all the time. That affects some people. But on the bright side, as I'm, releasing this show, it's just past the solstice. So tomorrow there's going to be more daylight than there was today, and then next day even more daylight than there was tomorrow. So it'll get better as time goes on, and our movement continues to get stronger, and we need you for that. So let me dive into it a little bit. Well, I want to look back at 2022, and this is no particular order or anything like that. But the one thing that struck me as I was thinking about it is women's rights came to the fore in 2022, and especially the Supreme Court decision taking away women's right to choose was a big deal, and the pushback was extraordinary. There were large marches across the country on the campuses in the cities. Women stood up and said, look, we're not taking this stuff. And in the midterm elections, when the Republicans were expected to do fabulously because of their overreach in their Supreme Court appointments, they didn't do as well as was expected. But the fight's not over. I mean, and I should say this too. I said we're going to talk about some of the things we didn't cover. We did cover this on Fight Back Radio, and you can read about it in fightbacknews.org as well, because it's that important. And it's important no matter what area of struggle you're in that you support women, whether it's in reproductive rights or whether it's on the job fighting discrimination and harassment. I mean, we've come through a whole bunch of Trump, Me Too, promoting rape culture. The president of the United States under Trump did things I never thought any president would do in terms of how he addressed women in such a demeaning and outrageous way. So 2022, women stood up. They fought back. It was exciting. Quite frankly, it was exciting for all of us to see that happen. On Fight Back Radio, I just wanted to say also, we don't talk a whole lot, or we haven't yet, we're going to, about the international situation. And, things happen not just in the United States, they happen all over the world. And I want to, just acknowledge some of them, not all, of course. But, particularly I'm looking at South America. This was, the countries of Bolivia and Venezuela have fought hard to stand up against U.S. imperialism, and have struggled through difficult times, and continue to. But there seems to be maybe breaking some headway there, especially probably because of the war in the Ukraine and the United States' need for oil. But those things, whatever. South America continues to be a place of hope. I also want to point out the elections in Brazil and Colombia. Colombia, we have a president of Colombia who's saying we shouldn't just be all in with the United States, and we should talk to Cuba, and things like that. And as Latin America and China lead the way for looking at not just letting the United States dominate every corner of the world economically, I think South America plays an important piece in all of this. And so Colombia, Brazil, those are interesting places right now for sure. Also, I want to turn to China. China. Right now, their economy is about the same size as the United States. Think about that. Obviously, the standard of living, because there's so many more Chinese people, isn't as high as it is in the United States. But without plundering the third world, all of Latin America, Africa, they've grown their economy to be the same size as the United States. And everybody, every expert, no matter left, right, or center, says they're going to surpass, if they haven't already, they're going to surpass the United States and zoom past them at that. And so that scares the United States. That's why we see so much saber rattling around China. The United States, going back to Richard Nixon, acknowledged that there was only one China, that Taiwan and China were the same people, part of the same country, and in fact, up until very recently, the overwhelming majority of Taiwanese would say the same thing. So why all this saber rattling about Taiwan and China now? Why all this? We're going to threaten the Chinese defense. We're going to possibly go to war with China, or we're going to at least cause all these kind of troubles. It's because think of the economics. Follow the money, as Deep Throat said back in the day, and that's really what it's all about. And as socialists and as people, we need to look at an international working class. We have more in common with the working class people, be they in Brazil or China or anywhere else, than we do with the rich people that are trying to plunder and exploit all of us. And so I want to, just acknowledge that, China is becoming more and more important. They just, the Chinese Communist Party just celebrated this year their 100th anniversary, and so there's, they're taking stock of themselves too. I think China is, going back to its roots and really, using Marx and Lenin and doing class analysis of their situation. And also I think, we're going to see, more BS come through, not just Fox News, all of the bourgeois channels in the coming year about China. We're at the beginning of some have called it a new Cold War, but we're in the beginning of the pivot towards Asia, is what Obama called it. Whatever you want to call it. They're trying to take China down, and our position has to be that we support the independence of nations. We don't have any gripe with as workers with the Chinese people. Quite the opposite. I mean, I remember Muhammad Ali. When they tried to draft him and send him to be at Vietnam, he says, "I don't have any gripe with the Vietnamese people. They haven't called me the N-word." And we don't have any gripe with the Chinese people. I think we should work with them and support them. And the United States, instead of putting all this money into military and saber rattling, sending Nancy Pelosi over there, whatever they do, we should be spending that money in the United States. We need to build better schools. We need to, I'm from the teachers union, as you all know. We need to pay our teachers and our educators and people in the schools, no matter what they do, better money. We need our healthcare system was challenged by the pandemic, and we saw the weaknesses there. We need to start putting something into there, and we're creating housing for people. There's so much we could do, and instead we're spending it on military stuff. Which I guess maybe a final thing I want to turn to from 2022 is the war in the Ukraine. The United States is, it seems like they're able to play a bad role wherever they are. And, the war in the Ukraine is, a proxy war. The United States is supporting, is just dumping tons of military wear into the Ukraine to keep this war going on. And so it's mostly, I see it as an inter-imperialist rivalry between the Russians and the United States, and the United States. If you listen to the major news stations anywhere, Europe or anywhere, not so much in the third world, but they act like the United States is just this great great country helping out these poor Ukrainians. But the whole process, going back to the color wars and the coup d'etat, where they installed somebody that was pro-West without an election, just literally just installed somebody. The Russians after that annexed Crimea, and we've had these wars between the Russian-speaking sections of the Ukraine and the Ukrainian-speaking sections, and thousands and thousands and thousands of people have died. And this is before there was even any invasion of any kind into the Ukraine. And then after Russia invaded the Ukraine, it looked early in the process that there was going to be a political solution. And even pivoting back to China, China has called for a political solution from day one, and I think it's interesting to look to see what they've been saying about all of this. But we haven't done that. We've said, okay, let's just the people that make guns in the United States, let's just keep sending them over there. Let's keep this war going. It's very similar, and we'll keep vilifying the Russian people and the Russian government. It's similar to what you saw, in Iraq, or even Iraq, Iran during the war between those two sides. We funded each side at different times, and it was in our interest just to keep war going on, to keep the military-industrial complex, those guys' pockets rich, whether it be Boeing or whatever, General Dynamics, Lockheed Martin, or whatever. All those guys. We have to think differently than that, I think. Anyways, moving off of the international situation, Fight Back Radio. We've had some discussion, but not much about the midterm elections and about electoral politics. As we go into 2023, I want to start to bring more guests onto our show who can talk about electoral politics. It's a tricky thing for the left. People get sucked into it and see that this is the only tactic that we have. We have to, just hope that we can win an election. And if we don't, we have to wait 4 years until the next time it runs around. And the other side of this is, you can't win the elections, and certainly it's difficult, and we can't have an influence on them. So we should just, throw up our hands and not do that. Both of those extremes are wrong. And because it's hard with this two-party system, which the richest people in the country control both parties, to get something going, we need to discuss it. We need to talk about it. We need to look for our openings. We had Mick Kelly on here recently talking about the Freedom Road program, and he talked about a criteria for a criteria for when you get involved in elections and when you don't. And we can put this in the show notes. I encourage our Fight Back Radio listeners to look back at the Freedom Road statement on elections and the criteria of supporting independent politics, looking for a particular cause, something that advances the national movements of the nationally oppressed, and how to get into elections and when to get in elections. So I think that's something we want to look at. Also, I think the Supreme Court is going to be trouble for us for many years to come. And what we've seen over decades now is when the Republicans have power, they take stuff away from us, and the Democrats, when they get power, they leave it like it is, or whatever, they backslide a little bit, or you get some small incremental thing. But we've been going backwards electorally for a long time. Having said that, there are some points of optimism. I'm here in Chicago, and we're going to have elections February 28th for mayor, and alderman, but also for police district council elections. We've been fighting since for years and years now for community control of the police, and the movement that was explosion when George Floyd was killed, has been set off a series of events. And here in Chicago, we were able to pass an ordinance called Empowering Communities for Public Safety. And what this does is it allows us to elect district council, 3 people from each police district that will have some voice and can call meetings, etc. But also it gives us some power to these district councils nominate 14 people. The mayor picks 7, and they set up a council that can talk about policy, police policy. It can deal with the budget, and so it's important for us to participate and make these things real. The Fraternal Order of Police and some of our enemies are trying everything they can to undercut this big victory. So this is an electoral process, and so for those that haven't been involved in elections, and many people from the black community, the lower sectors of the working class, this is a new thing for them. I'm running for office, and so that's something we need to look at. Also, I think we should look at school boards. You can run for school board on a very progressive left platform. It calls for restorative justice and certain curriculum and putting money into the schools so that everybody gets a fair and first class education. So across the country, I know the right wing, did this to great effect. Starting to run people for these lower offices, but we're starting to see a polarization in the country too. Whereas places like Florida, where Governor DeSantis and you're seeing laws start to pass that say don't say gay. You're starting to see laws passing to make it very difficult for black people and people of color, brown people, to vote, and trying to take away the franchise for them. And this is something we can't just say, well, elections are difficult, whatever. We need to fight for the democratic rights of oppressed people, of all people for that matter. So 2023, there's a line in the sand there, and we need to fight to protect people's right to vote. And it's not going to be, it's not a shoo-in thing. It's like bourgeois democracy is better than no democracy. And so we need to fight to maintain the rights we have, and we need to keep in mind that we have a bigger fight, a bigger struggle in mind as well. Also, let me just pivot here a little bit to, and I am monologuing a lot, so I hopefully you guys can stick with me on this. I'm gonna have a clip in a little while of one of our guests from 2022 that I think you'll like if you haven't heard it already. But I want to talk for a minute about organized labor too. We came into 2022 with there was a whole bunch of strikes. Some of you will remember the strikes at John Deere and at Kellogg's, and there was a miners' strike in Alabama, and new organizing at Amazon, at Staten Island, the warehouse there organized a union, and Starbucks workers across the country, just have been organizing shops and fighting back. And as I'm recording this right now, Starbucks workers are on strike here in Chicago for this weekend, and so they're pushing back. They're making demands, and it's a good time for organized labor. Right now unemployment is relatively low. Coming out of the pandemic, and so we can. This gives us a certain leverage that we should use. We should make very big demands right now. We should be organizing to fight, and if we do, we can win these fights. And so I want to encourage people to do that. The rail workers, voted. Many of them voted down a contract. That whatever Biden made this deal, and they reached a tentative agreement just before Thanksgiving in 2022, and many of the rank and file unions, the biggest and most important ones, voted it down. And then the United States Congress and the president signed a bill, making a deal for them, taking away their collective bargaining rights, taking away their right to strike. And I think it underlines that when there's unjust laws out there like this one, we need to start to think about challenging it. And I'm not saying the rail workers what they should do or not do. That's their call. I'm not. But I think, what we've seen in the whole history of the labor movement is when labor does something effectively, they make it against the law. You saw that with the Taft-Hartley bill, which passed, in the late 1940s, as Richard Blake, one of our guests, pointed out to us. And you see it again and again. They'll pass injunctions against you, whatever it is. But we need to stand up for what's right. I mean, the civil rights movement, I think, taught us that too. In the 1960s, that people didn't care if it was, against the law to sit at the lunch counter or whatever it was. There was actual actions taken. And in the labor movement, all of organized labor was against the law at one time in this country. And we didn't come into being, we didn't get the strength we have by just saying we'll do whatever they tell us to do. Sometimes we need to stand up and fight back, as the name of our Fight Back Radio here says. Also, I just, I want to flash back to international here again for a second. And, Palestine. I was reminded, I was watching the World Cup, and Morocco, which made it to the quarterfinals. Yay, Morocco, first African country to do that. But they, some of their fans were starting to carry Palestinian banners and things like this. I saw some of this on social media and on television. And the battle in Palestine for democratic rights is fundamental. And even there's another thing. When Trump moved the capital of Israel to Jerusalem, and just slapped the Palestinian people in the face in every which way that he could. The Democrats who said this is terrible, they got back in office. They've been in office now for more than 2 years, and have they done anything? No, they won't. But we're starting to see attacks on organizations, Palestinian organizations, women's organizations, at a higher level. The boldness of some of these street gangs in Jerusalem, the Zionist street gangs is outrageous, and so we need to stand up and support the Palestinians, and when there's a democratic Palestine is not something that can never happen. It's something people have fought so hard for so long, and is just. It's everybody in the world. I shouldn't say everybody, but all people of conscience in the world know this. And there's votes in the United Nations, and whatever. Maybe England, but certainly the U.S. and Israel will vote against it. They'll veto, but it's we can't. We have to say no to Israeli apartheid, and the boycott, sanctions, divest movement, continues, and we need to support that. I mentioned on a lighter side the sports thing about Morocco. Argentina won the World Cup, so that's something. I don't know how many Americans follow that. I enjoy it, and I love soccer. and I love sports, and so other thing, issues of in the sports world, the women national soccer team got a collective bargaining agreement where they got equality with the men, where they share the revenues, and this is I think this is groundbreaking. They do the same work that the men do. They play soccer. And in the case of the United States, I haven't seen the revenues, but I'm guessing it's even better because there's been so much success from the women's national team. But the fact they fought as a union, they stood together, it was, and won this victory for equality. I know, Megan Rapinoe, who just wrote a book in 2022 as well, talks about some of this and the needs for this and standing up, and I'd encourage people to grab that as well. She looks to Colin Kaepernick and from the San Francisco 49ers, the quarterback who first took one knee, and these sports things. We're all, many of us are fans, and they can they can have repercussions across popular culture, and so. I also wanted to point out Bridget Griner, who was arrested for having a small amount of THC in a vape, marijuana, when she was going into Russia, where she was going to play basketball. This is, I think, another example of. I find this incredible to me, actually. So first, she shouldn't have been arrested. I don't think. It's Russia's has their own laws and they can do it, but it seems. But she became the center because of the Cold War that's going on between Russia and the United States, because we're not trying to be friends, we're not trying to figure out how to make things better. But also it struck me that Bridget, what happened to her and the outrage across the corporate media here in the United States, this had been happening for like 4 decades. When Reagan declared the war on drugs, and Michelle Alexander's book, The New Jim Crow, I think documents this very well. There was drug use amongst white and black people in the United States was and is roughly the same, percentage-wise. But the number of black people going to jail and having long terms, et cetera, and police agencies, police departments being heavily funded to arrest people from the black community for small drug abuses, which filled our jails. For decades, cost enormous resources, broke up, just like what happened to Bridget Griner, broke up families, and there's no reflection on this and saying, oh my gosh, what did we do? What have we done? What do we continue to do in some states? But instead, it's like, oh no, Russia did the same thing we were doing for 4 decades. Let's make a big deal out of this. And so it strikes me just the double standard. I'm glad Bridget Griner is back in the United States, and she's a fabulous basketball player. I encourage people who I enjoy the WNBA, and if you're a sports fan, I would encourage you to check it out if you haven't already. Just a couple things from the world of sports. In terms of pop culture, I don't have too much for you, folks. My friends will tell you that I'm not with the latest music or whatever. I like old jazz and classical music. So we'll bring. I promise this. Fight Back Radio will bring somebody on who does know about these things, and we will have a discussion about popular culture and especially how it relates to our movement. And some of the protest songs, which are the ones I probably do know, but pop culture has to be more than Will Smith punching Chris Rock at the Oscars, and so hopefully our country has more to offer than that. Other crazy things that happened this year, Jeff Bezos going out into outer space. It reminded me. Speaking of pop culture, I guess it reminded me of Gil Scott-Heron's popular song in the late 1960s, about Whitey on the Moon, and basically, what are we doing here? But it's just it indicates the massive amounts of wealth that a very small number of individuals have, and how they they use this wealth however they want. I guess, I don't know, to flaunt it, whatever. But there are people in backbreaking poverty across this country and across this world. There are people that are hungry right now. There are people that are dying because they don't have the correct medical treatment. And this bozo is going into outer space. Books from 2022. Well, first I'm going to start out with a book from 2021. One of our guests was Frank Chapman, and his book, Marxist-Leninist Perspectives on Black Liberation and Socialism, is a must-read. If you haven't read that book, I encourage you to read it. Frank talks about the centrality of the black national question and black people to our movement for justice in the United States. And he talks also about the socialist movement when they had a good line on the black national question and when they didn't, and how that affected things. And he applies a scientific Marxist-Leninist analysis to looking at the black liberation movement over a period of time. And it's a must-read book. And so we'll put in the show notes again how you can get that book. Also, we had on Fight Back Radio Joe Burns, who wrote a book called Class Struggle Unionism. I'd encourage people to read that. It's put out by Haymarket, and it talks about basically that unions need to fight. They need to fight all out, all in, and we need to understand that it's not that cooperation isn't going to get us there. We need to understand that there's different interests. And if we're on the side of the working class, we need to actually put forward a program of struggle. And I'd say go back and listen to both of those podcasts. Frank Chapman and Joe Burns. And more recently, we had a podcast with Mick Kelly, who's the political secretary of the Freedom Road Socialist Organization, and he was talking about the program that Freedom Road just recently put out. And you should get that as well. It's you can go to frso.org and order it. It's I think it's $5 or something. It's not too expensive. Anyways, you should get that and you should read it. So those are the top books. I don't know if any of them made the New York Times list up. Probably not, but there are three that I would recommend that you read. Let me add one more. John Melrod, who was somebody I worked with, many years ago in Wisconsin when I was a teenager, early 20s, just wrote a book called Fighting Times, which talks about his life during that time when I knew him and before that, in the revolutionary movement and from the 60s and 70s. And so I would encourage people to read that book as well. I want to take a minute now. I mentioned Frank Chapman in his book. I want to play a short clip here of Frank Chapman's book, or Frank Chapman from his interview on Fight Back Radio, and he talks about, as I said, he looks at the socialist movement in the early part of the 20th century, especially the Communist Party and all the good things they did, but then they get tripped up a little bit. So he talks a little bit about that too. So here's a clip from Frank Chapman. So here you go.
Well, what happened to the Communist Party during that time period left an indelible scar on the party which exists to this day. And that is that the Black Liberation question was liquidated. Earl Browder, but he not only liquidated the Black Liberation Party, he tried to liquidate the party itself, which is where this thing ultimately leads, right? But he said that the Negro people no longer existed as a nation and that the party should fight for the integration of the Negro people into the American nation and not be so much engaged in the struggle for self-determination and equality. He said that the black folks in the South were being increasingly proletarianized, and so this eroded the economic basis for black people being a nation, and that was his position.
Why is that wrong? What's wrong with that?
Well, it's just not true. It's just not true. The class composition of black people as a nation has changed. The class composition was changing then. It had not quite changed as definitively as it is now. But the class composition had changed where black people as a nation was no longer based on a landless peasantry in the Deep South. More and more blacks were being proletarianized in the Deep South, as well as all throughout the United States. Like it's particularly true in Alabama, but it's also true in North and South Carolina and Georgia and other places. Wherever there was industry, more and more black people was coming into it. Also, it's true in Louisiana with regard to the marine workers and so forth and so on. In the lumber industry, a lot of black workers was proletarianized, but the land base for the black nation is still there. It has not disappeared. It stretches from southern Delaware all the way into eastern Texas. It's there right now. 54% of the black people in this country live in the South now, in that same black belt, and black people in the South are still fighting for the right to self-determination. That's what the voting rights is all about. So his thesis is wrong, and it was also a betrayal of the struggle for socialism in this country.
So many of the people that call themselves socialists today don't accept, or at least or don't talk about political power for black people the way you are in your book and the way you do right now. Mm-hmm. Do you want to talk about why that is, or what's the problem here? Why aren't people seeing this?
Well, they don't see the centrality of the struggle for black liberation. They don't see that in the United States of North America, a republic founded on slavery and genocide, they don't see that you cannot have a path to socialism without black liberation, Chicano liberation, the liberation of the indigenous people. They don't see that. They take a puritanical or Puritan class approach, that this is a class question only. It's not a class question only. It's also a national question. And in so much it is a national question, it involves black people as a people. It involves the Chicano people as a people, as a nation, which consists of workers and non-workers. And the super exploitation and oppression of these people is what is at issue here. And if you're not addressing that, then you are not really paying attention to what Karl Marx said, that labor in the white skin cannot be free as long as it's sold and branded in the black skin. And today, just put the word racist oppression in there. As long as there's racist and national oppression, no part of the working class can be freed, So that is where their mistake comes. They think that there's a way to socialism without addressing the national question, without seeing the special oppression of black people,
So in your thesis is that can't happen.
That cannot happen.
Yeah. So
in fact, look around the world. That has happened in no country that has taken the path to socialism. It hasn't happened in China. It's not happening in South Africa. It's not happening in the Philippines. It can't happen. In all of these places that I just mentioned, Vietnam, China, the Philippines, South Africa, so forth and so on, the national question is prominent, and the struggle for socialism takes place with that. There cannot be a struggle for socialism without that.
So, yes, that was Frank Chapman and his book, Marxist-Leninist Perspectives on Black Liberation and Socialism. Frank was one of many guests we had so far this year. And I should mention that too. Of the high points of 2022, Fight Back Radio was born on May 1st, International Workers' Day. We released our very first episode. We've grown a lot since then. I think we've worked. Our production team has grown, and our sound quality has gotten better. We have video now. They make, for those of you watching on YouTube, they're making me wear this funny hat. And so, I would encourage people, our listeners here, or our viewers, to go back and check out earlier episodes of Fight Back Radio. The one that you just heard the clip from Frank Chapman. Also, I would say, there's other guests you want to hear. Our first guest was Kobe Guillory from the National Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression. For those that are interested in Chicano struggle here in the United States, and Latinos fighting for self-determination, we had Sol Marquez and Carlos Montes, who both talked about the struggles that they've been involved in. Carlos going back and giving a historical perspective, and Sol more recently what's going on in Southern California. We had a labor history one with Larry Spivak from the Illinois Labor History Society, where we talked about some about a Haymarket and about the Pullman strike. And so, go back and look at some of these, labor leaders we've had on here. We had the International President of the United Electric and Machine Workers of America, Carl Rosen. We had Greg Kelly, who's from the 90,000 member Service Employees International Union, Healthcare, Illinois, Indiana, Kansas, and Missouri. And, these interviews were rich, for our Teamster friends, and actually a shout out to all of the Teamsters working at the United Parcel Service. I know many of you listen to Fight Back Radio, and I know you deserve a break more than anybody, because you just went through the peak season. And I know hopefully you got through it with your health intact, because they worked the crap out of you guys. But the Teamsters have been an important piece. We've had a couple of guests, Richard Blake, Eliza Schultz from the Teamsters, Mick Kelly, not UPS, but he's also a Teamster. And the Teamsters at UPS are going. Their contract ends this summer. There's a potential strike looming, and one of the biggest news is that they have new. Jimmy Hoffa is no longer the president of the Teamsters. Sean O'Brien is, and many progressives, many listeners to Fight Back Radio worked awfully hard to get Sean O'Brien elected the president, and so now the power is not just in the president, but the president can be with you or against you, and it makes a big difference. And so now we need to mobilize all of the Teamsters across the United States, and especially the UPS Teamsters, because that union is situated in a place where they can really lead the way. So we'll be talking more about the Teamsters in 2023. We'll be talking more about the Black Liberation movement in 2023. Christina Kittle, we had a guest, from the Students for a Democratic Society. And so we environmental, just Tracy Mullen. I'm giving you a list of all of our guests, but you can go to Fight Back Radio and look at all these shows, and I would encourage you to go back and listen to them. And I think they were good. I think they were good shows. We're, as I said, this is a unique episode. We're going to be posting clips from some of our episodes on social media over the next 2 weeks, so look for that. Also, as I said, our next guest, 2 weeks from now, we drop our shows every 2 weeks, is going to be Brandon Johnson, who's a candidate for mayor. He's currently an organizer with the Chicago Teachers Union, which is my union. And I got the CTU shirt on for those of you that are watching on the video. And he's currently a Cook County commissioner. So I think you'll enjoy that show. And I think, we're looking forward to hearing from you about that. Before we go, also, I want to pay respect to all the people that we lost that won't make it with us into 2023. All the comrades and activists that have fallen, and I can't name them all here, but I do want to name one. Jose Maria Sison, the leader of the Filipino movement, the National Democratic Front, and the leader of the Communist Party of the Philippines, who has written so many books that have given guidance to the movements in the Philippines, but even throughout the world. And so I want to acknowledge that and give my heart and my condolences to all the comrades in the Filipino movement. But 2023 promises to be a good year for all of us, I believe, and I think it'll be a good year for Fight Back Radio. As I mentioned, May 1st will mark our 1-year anniversary, and so we've enjoyed bringing this to you. Hopefully, you've enjoyed our shows. We're looking for feedback from you. So if you want to write for to tell us who our guests should be, how we can make this a better show, we're definitely looking forward to your criticisms or your feedback. You can reach us at richard.fightbackradio@gmail.com. And then also all our other Twitter, Instagram, we got all that stuff, and you can see that in the show notes as well. We want you to follow us there. But really, if you're on YouTube, you can. I'm pointing my finger down now. You can just hit the subscribe button there, or like, or whatever. If you're on another platform, we want you to subscribe to Fight Back Radio. Each of them has different things. Give us a thumbs up or a 5 stars. All those things. Write a review. Even if it's only 3 words. All those things help people find us. And we don't have gazillions of dollars to do TV ads, so we're counting on you to spread the word about Fight Back Radio. And so if you enjoy our shows, and if you've listened to me through this whole episode, I hope you enjoyed it. But tell others about it. Tell people that this is something that we should be doing. And then finally, I want to thank our Fight Back Radio production team, who have been so great through this, all of 2022. We continue to improve our quality, and what they've done is unbelievable. We've run into all kinds of glitches and things that I've messed up here and there, and they've always been able to fix it. Have been patient with me, and so I really want to thank Dodd McColgan, Shane Tremley, and Vince Olson, and I'm Richard Berg, and so on behalf of our entire Fight Back Radio team, I'm just saying to you all power to the people.